Sooner or later, you're going to realize, just as I did, that there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Oh yeah, welcome everyone to another episode of the Mere Morpheus podcast, episode number 16 here, the last episode in fact of season 1. I'm your host Kyrin, live on the 12th of May 2025, and as you might surmise, this is the final wrap-up episode where I put it all in a neat little bundle, very methodical, very disciplined. I have an order. Okay, no, I actually don't have much of that today. Today's going to be a bit of I'd say a free-form episode. I definitely will be summing up some of my final thoughts, but it's going over a couple of topics, some notes that I had that just didn't fit into a episode just of itself. And I'm really going to be talking about things like atomic governance. I'm going to be talking about the networks winning over time and why I think the future is bright for AI and for Morpheus. So let's jump right into it. Atomic governance. I mentioned this before, so what is it? Well, essentially, open source maintainers get to decide resources and how they are allocated. This is done as transparently as possible, and there are still responsibilities. And if the community, for example, decides that a certain person is not behaving as they should be, or if they don't like what this person is doing, they can get replaced. And it's a very informal system. There's no formal procedures. There's no locked type bureaucracy. There's no rules nor regulations dictating what happens when this person does this or that this should be followed in this manner. Essentially, it is a voluntary group of people, I guess, deciding to work together, and a naturally forming group and leadership arises, but it is not a set in stone sort of thing. Now, initially, I had promised a full episode on atomic governance, and I'm not actually going to do that. And there's a reason for that. This is because when I first heard of it, I thought it would be a kind of widespread philosophy with principles. There'd be diagrams. There'd perhaps maybe be some workflows, interlinkage between people, and I'd be able to say like, okay, this is how this runs and this sort of thing. But like I mentioned, it is very informal. There still has to be decision making. There still has to be code being put out and responsibilities and things like this. But it is actually none of that. Nope, nada. And I actually think that's kind of brilliant in a way. It's better than I even expected, because it's very similar to the value for value model, which is what I believe in very strongly, which is that the best way for people to work together is on a voluntary manner. It is deciding without these strict formal procedures or set in stone salary or things like this. For example, you might look at things like DAO and governance, and people have been trying to do this for a while. But the problem with DAOs is like you just can't vote on everything. I've had my own little play in with them and systems where governance is a more of a voting thing, and it's just too much work. It's too much, it's meant to be getting around the bureaucracy of normal governments and normal institutions and companies and things like this by, it's anyone can get in and anyone can have their say and things like this. But you just end up with a different type of inefficiencies and wasted times and things like this. So I like this quote. The DAO that governs the least governs the best. Jefferson, probably. And I think that's actually really good. So the Morpheus runs on this system. There is a bunch of different maintainers. I've talked about them in a previous episode. I think it was in Layer 0, of how there is numerous different people running the numerous different code bases and the, what did I say before, the maintainers or the open source maintainers of a certain section of the project. And I think that's just super healthy. I think that's probably the best way this can be done, that there is no rules, there is no regulations and things like this. Sure, I initially had written down like there's no drama. That's definitely not the case. You can look at what's going on with Bitcoin Core at the moment and all sorts of debates and things like this. But this is honestly the healthiest way. There's going to be disagreements. You might think a relationship without any disagreements is one which is the most healthy and sound. But no, it's when disagreements can be worked out and aired in a way that is, I guess, healthy and allows for the truth to emerge, because the truth is not always pretty. Which actually gets onto this next point I had here, which is the persistence of man and machine. And I've only participated in a couple of open source projects. Podcasting 2.0 I mentioned most because that was the one I'm most deepest in, probably. And what I've noticed is it's like most types of groups and communities, which is that people come and go, and that's not an indication of something not working or that something's awry. And usually the coming and going is due to these disagreements. I don't like this person. This person does this or that. I don't like the direction the project is happening, and I feel my voice is not being heard, or things like this. And I don't think that's an indication that something's going wrong. If anything, it's an indication that something is going right, which is that people can come and go as they leave, can come and go as they please. They can leave as they please. And this is where, I, for example, even though I'm very invested in terms of monetary, in terms of my time, in terms of my energy, in terms of my thoughts into the Morpheus project, I'm going to disappear for like 2 months now as I go traveling to Europe in a couple of days' time. And whilst I'll still keep lurking and watching, and that is my normal default mode in all manners of almost all manners of internet life in terms of communities and things like this, I participate by doing podcasts and my own individual thing, but it's not usually as part of a group discussion. I'll still be around and looking with my, voting with my thoughts and actions and things like this. And I think this persistence is what I notice in I guess like the healthy projects, is that people tend to come back. They'll go away for a while and they'll, disappear. They'll have a disagreement. They'll, not like what this person did, or not like this, or they'll have some drama going on in their life, or something that's, taking up a lot of their time, a new baby, a death in the family, a new job, traveling, whatever it may be. And that eventually they'll come back. That's kind of the sign I see of healthy type behavior. And, why do they come back? Usually it's because of the reason they joined in the first place, a shared vision of a strong view of the future, of where the future is going. And usually it's built on positivity, optimism, and hope, because the negative type communities, which you can find out there, tend to splinter and have a hard time of maintaining people, because, just being negative all the time isn't pretty fun. It's not a great place to be around. And when people come back, it's almost like, whether they like it or not, they're just drawn back to the thing. And that's kind of like the man side of things, the human side of things. The persistence of machine, I like what David has said many times, which is that the reason why Bitcoin was persistent was because the software could pay for the hardware. And I think Morpheus has a very good and strong chance of doing this exact same thing. The way the 4 buckets are set up to reward the 4 types of people participating: the capital, the community, the code, and the compute. That just makes sense to me. You could add a 5th one in, you could make a 3rd one, and it would, you could make arguments. You could have an exact similar project with almost everything the same, but 1 or less, and maybe they would work. But for me, this makes sense to me. And that over time, the persistence of compute, of agents will be seen, and that it's not going to be the flash in the pans or the relying on, the kind of casino gambling that you'll see with other AI agent protocols, whether that's, I'll just name some of the big ones, the virtuals or AI 16Z and things like that. I think the real test of how Morpheus will hold up is not in this next upcoming bull run, which will probably be over the next year or so, but in the next 3 years. Will agents be developed, deployed on all of these other places? Or are they going to see that somewhere like Morpheus, which has this steady drip feed, of continual, more tokens going out, of being able to pay for the compute, to pay for your time, for people to put capital in and get rewarded for that over time. I think that's the way that you'll see the persistence of these AI agents starting to emerge in the Morpheus ecosystem versus some of these other places. So, the bootstrapping, the actual utility, I think will take a long time for these things to really emerge, to have these, agents, and when I say agent, the definition can get rather hazy. One of the things I've started to think about is an AI agent was one who will do things that you don't ask it to do, and perhaps even not do things that you ask it to do. It'll have this ability to reason and do these complex tasks, which might involve counterintuitive things or things that don't particularly you didn't think of, and that it is smart enough to do. So, the bootstrapping, where you have to get the someone be able to get rewarded for more tokens for creating the agent, so that the agent can go out, so that it can gain popularity with other people, so that more is attracted to it, so that the developer then has more time to perhaps hire more people or get more compute to power the agent. All of this just takes a lot of time to set up. Morpheus is only a year old. I think it's going to take a lot more time until we really start to see the benefits of a strong network forming. Which gets us onto the next point. Funny how I am managing to link these together so well. You'd maybe even think I designed it this way. So networks win over time. I did a book review a while ago of one called The Square and the Tower by Neil Ferguson. It's a bit of an average book. I'd actually recommend looking at the book review so you don't have to read it in terms of the whole package. But there was a couple of things in it that I think really showcased why networks are valuable, and with the amount of examples and examples through history of how networks have been forming and taking over from the hierarchies that used to be the standard case. So, if we look back 1,000 years, we don't really see networks that much. We see hierarchies, whether it be king or queens, whether it be a dominance in trade of a particular company, Dutch East India, for example, or of a certain type of technology which is only in one place, and that allows this place to become much more dominant. Think of things like, gunpowder, or perhaps even in Japan, where it was the certain types of steel making which allowed samurai class to form, all these sorts of things. The advent of technologies in the let's just say 1800s onwards, because the word network was formed a little bit before that, but networking as a verb was really only in the late 1800s where it started to become into the English language, at least. It allowed networks and networks effects to dominate in terms of trade, in terms of communication, talking things like the telegraph, and it's very much easy to see in the last 25 years, quarter of a century, since the 2000s, with the networks of social media and communication and things like that really becoming the most valuable assets in over that time period. And then, of course, Bitcoin being the prime example of a pure network, which, as it gained more adoption, as more people got into it, its value increased over time. I've been chatting with my friends and just random people lately, my brother and things like this, and what they've shown, and not even talking about AI, it's just popped up randomly, is that many of them, and in a very quick succession, have decided, like, you know what, I'm going to pay for ChatGPT. This is becoming so useful, so much part of my daily life, that this subscription is worth it to me. It's becoming a necessity that they're willing to pay for. And I see this as a super positive sign for Morpheus and the AI agent future, which I particularly envision, which is, the first is that the demand for AI is real. I see it with my co-host Juan, with the business that he set up with someone, and though it did not eliminate jobs, it stopped new jobs being formed, because they can now use it for some very heavy documentation stuff, which would have required many, many people in the past, and now he doesn't need to do that. Uh, the agents will be using services like the large language models to, scrape data the agents are kind of built on the LLMs. And I just think as long as there is lots of inference being used, and whether that comes from a centralized company like ChatGPT and OpenAI, or from the decentralized places, as long as there's a choice of them, I think that is super, super healthy. For all of that ChatGPT allows, it disbars as much as well. So you might be thinking like, oh, but doesn't that just mean agents will come from these places where, people are paying for them, like my brother, like my friend Manchu? And I just don't see that being the case. The networking is what is important here. And these places, whilst they can have integrations in and do things, I just don't see the full spread of what humans will want and what will, probably inevitably come at the front. What are going to be the most popular agents at the start? It's probably going to be the stuff which, people will, and when I say people, I mean the broad spread, perhaps media will cover as a negative thing. It's going to be porn agents. It's going to be the gambling agents. It's going to be the, drug type agents, or the, ones which are recommending medicinal stuff or things like this. Those are the ones which will be the most useful for a small minority of people. Once those use cases are approved, they will then eke out into the larger ecosystem. But of course, you're not going to be able to have a gambling agent with that's connected to or owned or operated by ChatGPT. That is not going to be the place where that's going to come from. So I see the rise of just the use of AI as and when I say that, I mean talking about the inference, obviously, as a super positive. And the more successful these companies get, because more people are using it, the better that the future is looking, and that it's the network, the integrations of agents, which is going to be the most important, the most valuable thing. And I just don't see those coming from these centralized places. They're probably going to have to originate from a decentralized place where, an individual developer or a group of people can get together and work on things and access stuff, which is not going to disbar them from asking, can you create a version of me that's black, or can you, create some porn, or use this IP that is. The funniest thing was when I was asking for, I think it was ChatGPT, to download some audio files that I owned, that I put in an RSS feed, and it's saying, no, you can't do that. That's IP protected and stuff, which is not the case. You give up digital rights for an RSS feed. That is what a podcast is. And even though I own it, it wouldn't let me do what I wanted. So, there's just a small example there of where you can go, okay, like this is not going to be the place where these agents will originate. And I was talking about, the more use cases of things being created, and more demand, and more energy efficiency creates more demand. This is slightly counterintuitive, which is a trend which I love to see. I love when your intuition gets flipped. And I had a note for ages about why DeepSeek is actually a boon for NVIDIA. It's old news now, I guess. DeepSeek, for those who are perhaps coming into this from the future, the bright, hopeful future, DeepSeek was a Chinese model, came out in January 2025, so about 4 months ago. And this caused a huge drop in NVIDIA's share price, 18%, something like that. And the reason was because it found a cost-effective way to create rather accurate LLMs for 20 to 50 times cheaper than the current models of ChatGPT and the likes. And suddenly you get, this is troubling times for NVIDIA because, if it's 20 to 50 times cheaper, people are going to buy 20 to 50 times less chips. NVIDIA's doomed, and DeepSeek's going to swallow it up. The thing with this is, though, this is very short-sighted and is not going to be what happens in the long run. History is replete with cases of how lower cost energy creates new use cases. Two books I'd recommend reading: How Innovation Works by Matt Ridley, book review done on that. Of yes, when the energy costs get lower, people start to use more energy, funnily enough. And then this drives the demand again. Second Curve by Charles Handy is the other book. So in these, they'll talk about how, easy natural gas deposits to mine or to extract would run out in the early 21st century, and hence oil and coal would become more expensive as we relied on it more. What we actually saw was that the need for more energy meant that shale gas became viable. So if there is a demand or a pinch that you might feel, we get innovative. We find new ways of unlocking new types of energy. And when this does happen, we then create new demand for it. So you might think, energy is getting more expensive, we're going to drive our cars less. That's not what happens. Things become a necessity in our life. We're willing to pay a short-term price increase, and what this short-term price increase does is means that, we need to find new ways of getting cheaper energy, and then this happens. So, necessity is the mother of invention. We've all heard of that. AI demand is only going to go parabolic. The more, the cheaper that DeepSeek makes it, it doesn't mean like we're going to use less. We're going to use more of it. It is going to go fucking bananas. And a lot of it will be wasted and inefficient for sure. That is what always happens. But the waste and the inefficiency allows new use cases to be formed. It allows people to experiment. It allows, people to, a funny little example, which I like, is that one of my friends in Podcasting 2.0, James, he hosts a thing called, Pod News, which is basically like news about podcasting in general. And so he gets a lot of, he's a journalist, so he gets, what do they call it? It's like the notes from a company press releases where they're saying like, hey, this is our exciting news coming out, and they'll typically send it to him. And what he's noticed compared to, let's say, 6 years ago was, he used to get these, detailed press releases, and then he would have to kind of, or he'd get a press release of some sorts. It would have some details in it, but not be like too extravagant. Wouldn't be too crazy. What he's noticing is that they're getting longer and longer and filled with more details and flowery language. And he's going, okay, like these people are using AI to bump up the press release, to make it more exaggerated, to make it sound better, to make sure it's like squeaky clean and there's no mistakes or anything like that. And so they're getting longer. And so then he's now using AI to go, can you give me the shorter version of this? So what we're seeing is someone starting with like a piece of information, using AI, expands it out, sends it over to him. He then gets it and then expands it back down. So you're adding a whole lot of inefficiency and waste in it, because they could just send him the thing directly to him and there wouldn't be any need for AI involved. So you might go, wow, incredibly inefficient, boiling the oceans, using all the water. But that certainly is saving time in the process. And whilst it's kind of wasting a bit of time as well, probably if you looked at it as a net effect, the time saving for both him and for the other person in terms of actually creating this press release, and then him having to, filter out even the bit of noise that they would write out by hand, is making it much more easier and quicker overall. So this is where I certainly see, just the more use cases there are, the more everything that happens with AI, the worrying signs would be is, I guess, like people not talking about not finding these huge boons in terms of cost savings and things like this. NVIDIA is going to be fine. DeepSeek's going to be fine, and AI and Morpheus is going to be fine as well. Which gets me onto my little last point here. I guess every action matters. I sometimes have this lackadaisical attitude towards certain topics when it's, the large sweeping events of history and your place in it. There's not much you can do. Your vote. We had a recent election here in Australia. Your vote doesn't matter. It's one vote of 20 million or however many people vote in Australia. It's a pretty high percentage. I think like 97% of the adult population. Your individual vote doesn't matter. Saving $1 extra doesn't matter. Your life in the grand scheme of the universe doesn't matter. But honestly, that's just the cynical part of me, the part of me that keeps me on guard for scams, for ward off being fooled or doing stupid things. And that's the true belief is that I do believe that where not every single tiny little thing matters, but certainly if you're passionate about it, if you're committed to it, where you put your money, aka your capital, where you put your intellect, aka your brain power, your code, where you put your energy, your compute, and where you put your time in terms of building and community, it certainly does matter. I'm very hopeful for the Morpheus project. All the episodes I've done have really allowed me to dive into it much more deeper than I typically would for something new like this. And, the first 4 episodes laid out what I see are as the problems, the negative side of things, the problems that currently exist, and why AI agents will come about and won't come about from the places like OpenAI, or why they won't be as effective or as interesting. I laid out, and because they're centralized, because they're non-private, because they're censored, episodes 5 to 10, they're all about the technical details of the Morpheus project. So the white paper, the 4 C's, and the tokenomics. And these final episodes were about the kind of non-technical aspects, I guess, if you want to call it that, of the interactions between the people, of the community, of vision, of why I have a lot of hope for this project, why I'm invested in it, why I spend my time and energy here. And it's because I have this vision of the future of AI agents and the boon that will be to humanity and society at large. And I want it to be the type of, vision that the vision that I envision. I want it to not be dystopian. I want it to embody the principles that I care about in life. Things like, non-coercion, things like open access for anyone, things like following the truth, and the truth being one of the most vital things. All of these I view coming from something like Morpheus. I really hope it is Morpheus. That would be great. If it's another project, I'll be on the lookout for that as well. But that is what I'm very much interested in, invested in, and why I will continue to support the Morpheus project as well. So, I hope you've gotten benefit from these episodes. I hope that you have enjoyed them, that you have a similar hope, a similar vision, and are willing to work hard towards it. So, that's going to cap me off for season 1 here. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. As I will like to mention, this is a value for value podcast. So for any value that you got out of it, just please return it in some shape or form. The best that I think you could do is just sharing this via word of mouth, telling someone who is in need of some education, perhaps, in need of some encouragement, in need of trying to understand why AI agents matter and why the type that they come from and where they come from is important. And direct them to an episode. And there's other things that you can do in terms of talent. If you notice there's any thing wrong with the feeds, if you think I missed some things out, if you want to add some comments onto any of the videos or to me personally, please reach out. There's plenty of links down in the show notes. And then finally, some treasure. If you want to support my efforts here, you can do that monetarily as well. I've got my ETH address down there, so you can send me some Morpheus if you want. You could use me as a reference if you're staking some capital, and you can also contribute and stake your more to the Mere Morpheus project, which is on Arbitrum as well, if you are in the builder side of things as well. So that's going to be it. Thank you very much. I as I mentioned, I'm going to be traveling. I'm really looking forward to going to Europe for the first time. So that's going to be exciting for me over these next 2 months. What do I envision for the Mere Morpheus? Well, it's going to go into hibernation for, I'd say, at least half a year. I'll go traveling. I'll come back. I probably want to see more developments, more things going on with Morpheus until I decide I can really start doing some episodes again to start highlighting things. Probably I will highlight projects next time if I had to guess what I would do. And yeah, no set plans for season 2, but likely there will be one at some point. But who knows? The future can throw up lots of different things at you. So I really do hope you've enjoyed. I really do thank you for joining in. A lot of gratitude on my part. I do see the streams, the downloads and things like that, and it does mean a lot to me. So I really do hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Ciao for now. Kyrin out.